Hey guys, welcome back to the Bond Report. My name is Chris, aka the Bearded Blofeld. Let's get into it. Today we are talking about Anthony Horowitz's third book in his trilogy, With a Mind to Kill. So this book really kind of culminated a bookend of a trilogy, if you will. And today I am joined with several friends in the Bond community. Say hello to everyone. We've got Jocelyn Sia, Ladies Who Bond, Joe Silock, the Bond enthusiast, Chris Morales, that one Bond guy, and Handa Schwartz with the Bond Girl Project. Thank you guys for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and let the viewer at home know we tried to do this last year, and somebody, I'm not going to point fingers, somebody may have screwed up the audio and we couldn't use the footage. So we're going to revisit this. It's an exciting time because Anthony Horowitz is actually going to re-release this book on paperback on April 27th. And you'll be able to find that copy then. So by the time you're watching this, it should be out there. So make sure to check that out. For guys, anybody at home watching, if you want to reach out to any of us in the Bond community here, I'm going to leave links to everybody's Instagram page, YouTube account down below in the description so that you can reach out to them and start following and maybe get a little bit more involved in the conversation for the next time around. I'm going to kick off questions here. We've got a nice, fun list. And for everybody at home watching, this is going to be a spoiler-filled video. So if you have not read the book, get a copy of the book, stop the video, come back, watch it later. I don't want to ruin this for you. It was a fun adventure overall, but we're going to jump right in. So Jocelyn, I'm going to start with you, young lady. Having written 3 books in the Bond franchise now, Horowitz, we've gotten his trilogy. What did you think of him as a Bond writer? And what did you think about the trilogy as a whole?
That's a good question. So I think Horowitz is a very good writer. I personally think that he has captured the Fleming writing style very well. He really milks it in this book with the descriptions of locations. I think of the 3 books, I think Forever and a Day is actually still my favorite. I read that at the end of last year. But that's yeah. I think overall though, all 3 of his books did not disappoint. There's quite a bit of action and locations, and it's got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I would agree. I like the way he gave us a bookend, if you will, of his adventures. We start off, he almost pulled like a Star Wars trilogy, if you will, in a sense, because he gives us the middle book with the first trilogy. Then he goes back and gives us the prequel with Forever and a Day. So Trigger Mortis was the middle. Then he gives us the prequel with Forever and a Day. Then he rounds it out and gives us the final one with A Mind to Kill. And I really liked that dynamic. Joe, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And I think it was interesting how he started with the middle first, right? Because the Trigger Mortis was his first one. So that's the first of the whole thing. And he had the luxury, or maybe the advantage, of getting at least the first 2 books. He had original Fleming material, unpublished original Fleming material that he included. So this book, With a Mind to Kill, he didn't have any Fleming to call on, but he pulled in so many other references to other books, other characters, villains, and everything. So he knows his Fleming, and he clearly enjoys writing about it. So it's kind of a shame this is his last book.
No, I mean, I loved it. I mean, I actually, as someone who is still actually going through the original Fleming novels, I can really appreciate from what I've read up to with the Fleming novels, like reading into Trigger Mortis and Forever and a Day. I have specific memories. First Horowitz novel I remember picking up and reading out of that trilogy was Forever and a Day. And I remember I was at a Borders, if you guys remember that, back reading that book, and I couldn't put it down. It was fantastic. But then I realized I wanted to revisit it in the order that he did, and then it started clicking. All the hidden Easter eggs, all of the references that Horowitz pulled into it, to bring it back to Fleming, which was really, really cool. One thing I have to give him props for this book in specifically, and then I have the kind of blurry here with my camera, but I have the exclusive signed edition. In the back, there's actually exclusive content from the Waterstones. So then he talks about how he really kind of felt a sense of writer's block with this book at the very beginning stage. And to see the end result on how it came out, it's phenomenal. I think he really, it almost felt like I was reading Fleming when I was reading this. I could definitely see parts of it.
This one for me was, I don't want to say that it was my favorite, because I mean, it just wasn't, but it had a much darker tone. So it's ironic that, Joe, you bring up that, you know, he didn't have Fleming material for this one. And yet, to me, this was almost the most Fleming-esque of all of them, just because of the tone. So, Handa, what about you?
Well, actually, it's funny because this was the first book for which that I read. I didn't read the other ones, and it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. And the funny thing is that starts right after The Man with the Golden Gun, so you have a connection there. It's super interesting, the way that he writes, the way that he connects, especially the Man with the Golden Gun, and he also made references to the other books. So that's really nice. I love the book, and I cannot wait to read the other ones.
Yeah, I think once you read the other ones, and once you have that whole picture, and guys, chime in here if you agree or think something else here, but I feel like once you have that picture laid out of all three as that chapter, and like I said, that you've got that middle and those bookends there, it really kind of shows you like where his mindset was at going into this writing.
And I would say too that it's really cool that he did it that way, because you could pick up any one of the 3 books that he's written and don't have to worry about, oh, should I have read this one first? Should I have read that one first? The way that he planned it out, which I think was super smart, and anyone can start anywhere. And as long as you had some basic background from the original Fleming, you would get the Easter eggs. But even if you didn't, it was still a whole new experience for the reader.
I like the fact that since all 3 books kind of take place at different parts of the Bond's life timeline, that you get to experience different aspects of Bond and his like mental state. Where like this one is pretty much at the end of his career, so to speak, and it's a lot different from his mental state, like compared to Forever and a Day. And that's really nice that he's been able to capture all of that within the 3 books. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and Handa, so that's a great thing for someone like yourself who hasn't read the previous 2. There's continuity, but there's not, if that makes sense. So it doesn't matter what order you read them in, because I read well, actually I did read them in order. I read Trigger Mortis, but I thought I read them out of order when I first read them, because I was like, oh, well, this is in the middle, and he wrote the first one as the beginning. So, and then I went back and was like, I got that backwards. So, but whatever, it's still very enjoyable, and I love the tie-ins that he adds so much.
And I do have a question, considering that you all read the 3. Do you feel consistency in the character? I mean, do you feel it is the same James Bond? Because it's so different timelines from what's happening, right? So I wonder if you feel consistency.
I think for me, I saw consistency in the writing style, although I think the characters, like Jocelyn mentioned, since they're coming in at different times of his life, he's a new agent. He's kind of a seasoned agent, and now he's kind of near retirement agent. So I think you kind of get the different perspective on his life. Like in this book with The Mind to Kill, he's kind of at the end. He's sort of beaten up. His body's beaten down. He's just kind of mentally at the end of his rope. So it's a different, I think, take on him is kind of how I felt.
I would say that I definitely, reading this, saw a glimpse of Daniel Craig's portrayal of Bond, at least relating it to the films, because like the different stages with that the novels portray for each novel, were so how Bond was portrayed as Daniel Craig's films. I mean, again, Casino Royale and Forever and a Day. He's very young. And then we have Trigger Mortis, you could say Skyfall, maybe Quantum-ish. And then here we are. And mind you, this book was first released post No Time to Die also. So I wonder if there was some similarities that he pulled from the Craig era. Just kind of curious, or just kind of interesting rather, that I could relate more with that because when I read Fleming, I kind of think back to like Sean Connery, or more so Sean Connery when I'm reading the Fleming novels. It's just for some reason that's me. But with this writing style and with the character in this trilogy, I saw nothing but like Daniel Craig, and I just thought that was an interesting point to bring up.
Yeah. And that's a common question I like to ask people, and maybe we can go around real quick and find that out. When I was reading this as well, I was 100% Connery, which is weird because for all intents and purposes, I should have been thinking about more given the connection with that movie. And we're going to get into that later. I don't want to dive into that. That's a whole other question later. But Jocelyn, who were you kind of seeing during this book?
I actually have a fictional James Bond, like a literary Bond in my mind. I don't really think of the movie stars. I just kind of have like bits and pieces of descriptions from Fleming and like from cartoon art, like comic artists and all that stuff, and kind of just all together. So like, especially when they talk about like the scar, because like no Bond actor has a big freaking scar on his face.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
True.
The one that you look up when you Google James Bond, who is James Bond? It's that black and white picture that
Yeah,
Fleming
that black and white.
right?
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
hairline that's like,
Yeah.
Isn't it like the Hoagie Carmichael?
yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Look alike.
Yeah. Hannah, do you have somebody that you picture?
Yes, Sean Connery. You only live twice, Sean Connery. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right where I went to. I don't go Diamonds Are Forever just because the eyebrows kind of creep me out a little bit. They're a little too like spidery and coming at you. But yeah, he's still aged enough, I feel like, and mature enough in that movie to where that was the believability factor for me. That ties in with what we were just talking about, though. Is what did you guys think? And Hannah, I'm going to kick off with you this time. What did you guys think of the tie-in with The Man with the Golden Gun and like some touches on Smirsh and From Russia with Love? Like, did you feel like that worked well in this book?
Yes, I totally agree. It worked well, especially fill the gaps that we were wondering with the prior book, right? With The Man with the Golden Gun. And I think the way that he makes the references, it's very nice. I like it a lot. And specifically, not only the reference to The Man with the Golden Gun, but to the other books as well, So I like the fact that this book is connected to the Fleming universe. And the way that he writes, I really love it,
The one thing I really love about when a writer continues to bring part of the Fleming universe is that we kind of get another perspective from something that we've seen before.
Yeah.
So it kind of expands upon the idea that Fleming wrote about, which makes it more human, I guess. It's kind of cool to see somebody else's take on it. So when all the aspects of talking about Smirsh and outside of all of the very hard names that I could not pronounce while I was reading this whole entire time, it was great, and I really appreciated that because it's a unique trait that a lot of writers typically find that they have trouble with. They don't want to get fact checked if they do something and they're not too sure, and they're like, oh shoot, is this exactly what he said in the Fleming novel? He did it perfectly, and there was no like discontinuity with anything that we read, which was really cool.
Yeah, and I liked a lot of the references. This to me felt like a true spy novel. I really got that sense of like, because we go back and he's talking about the new Smirsh, which is Steel Hand in this book, and like you said, all the different names. And I'm gonna try it. I'm probably gonna slaughter this, but General Gruboza Boyshkovich. Yeah, I see. No, Gruboza Boyshkov. General G. We'll just leave it at that. Enjoy that laugh at home. But there was so many people. We had there was like a new Rosa Klebb in this book with General Kirilenko. She's former KGB. Eric Munt, the Hammer, he's kind of the heavy, comes in. He's going to be that type of character. So I felt like Horowitz really checked a lot of boxes in having these tie-ins with previous adventures. But Joe, what do you think on this one?
Yeah, I think in this one he had the advantage. So you have Bond who's recovering from the events of The Man with the Golden Gun, And then he ties it in even later in the book near the end when Bond is trying to break Boris's trigger ward. He's kind of gouging his finger into the bullet wound from Scaramanga's gun, to try and not fall under the kind of spell of that thing. So he kind of ties in that Horowitz ties in that the injury even through the very end of the book, which I would think was pretty well done.
Yeah, he really kind of brought things full circle, which I thought was so unique, because that's the type of continuity in books like this that I want. If you haven't read it, it won't. I mean, they explained it enough, but I don't feel like it's so detrimental. Like if you don't read the other book, you could still enjoy the adventure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Attack on the Bridge. For me, this felt like, nonstop action. We've got RPGs, and I'm going to throw a picture up here of, the bridge itself, the tower. We've got, the actual RPGs that Horowitz quotes. So tell me, did you feel like this is where the action possibly peaked in the book?
The thing is, there were so many small spurts of that action throughout the book. This one is definitely a little bit more highlighted just because it was I think the majority of it. What I loved was the fact that we were able to really see Bond's thought process throughout this whole experience. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but him really thinking about different scenarios. If we were to go this way, how would that end up? If we were to go to in that direction, how would that go up? And then even his conversation with, and correct me if I'm wrong, a new agent, like he was relatively new, and he could tell that he was relatively new. He knew who Bond was, and he kind of looked up to him. And I'm talking about an agent on MI6 side. And he looked up to Bond, but then when he realized, because again, the whole plot, spoiler alert, is that Bond is supposed to be known for be in trouble for M's death. He killed M. Still being brainwashed by Smarsh and all that, but you had this character who really looked up to Bond, and then he realizes that Bond killed the head of MI6, and I think that stuck out to me because you see somebody again who's looking up to a character we like, and it kind of represents kind of like us in a way, like that agent kind of represented us. We like this character so much, or so like in the fan community, but yet just because this happened, his image of him got shattered.
Jocelyn, when it came to the bridge scene, what was your take on that?
So I actually liked the chapter leading up to the bridge scene, like the whole conflict between Bond and the MI6 agents, and I like that suspenseful buildup, kind of the what's going to happen, what's Bond going to have to do with these people, and you don't really know, and then you have the action to just basically screw everything up, and I really like that it made Bond really have to think on his feet about what he's going to do. And I think of all of the Fleming books and the continuation novels, this is the first time that the Irish have ever been involved, in any sort of situation, which I thought was kind of an interesting take, because there has been in the past conflict between England and the Irish and things like that. So it made it pretty interesting for me.
So Joe, so as everything was going on the bridge, obviously we talked a little bit about kind of what happened here, but we get past the bridge scene in a sense, and Bond gets thrown overboard. He gets into this boat and takes off. What did you think about that boat chase? And I'm going to throw some images up here for everybody at home. It was a very specific type of boat that they used to get away in because they knew the lay of the land. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought this is an interesting setup because when you have this attack and we're in the middle of the first act, so we've got a pretty high intense action sequence in the middle of the first act, usually have them more towards the end of the act. It's a tough part for MI6 to defend, right? You're in central London. They mount an attack. The bad guys do. Well, how does MI6 respond? They can't get people there quickly enough. So they have a pretty big advantage in getting Bond out of there. And then they did all the research, obviously, and had the right kind of boat so they could get out of there effectively. So yeah, I think it was well written, and it was definitely a suspenseful sequence.
And Hannah, let me know what you think. Did it fly by for you? Was the intensity there? Or was it one of those that was just turn the page?
Yes, exactly. I was like, what's going to happen next, And the fun thing is that actually, I don't know if you guys were reminded of the Pierce Brosnan chase on The Word Is Not Enough, the boat chase. It automatically came to me, when I was reading. I was like, okay, what's going to happen now? It was very intense. It could be a pre-title scene. So it was awesome. Super.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been actually cool. Yeah. We've kind of, laid out the premise here. And Chris, you talked about this briefly earlier, and kind of a setup for the reason, this is all happening to Bond and everything. And if you've read the book, everybody knows. But, Bond was actually captured by the Russians. He was brainwashed, and they sent him back to assassinate M. And what they sent him back with was a poison gun. And I'm going to show an image of that here, because this is actually a real poison gun that was confiscated from a KGB Soviet Union member during that era. And this is exactly what they would have sent Bond back with to take M out. And I think it's just so cool that Horowitz took the time to dive into some of the history of this era and give us these real life events. Because, authors don't have to do that. They don't have to go historically accurate. And I feel like that's a big strong suit, and something that we see time and time again with his books, is that he constantly gives us historically accurate elements that throws into the adventure that doesn't pull you out. Would you guys agree?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
We got to talk about the big one in the room. Joe, I'm going to lead in with you here. Colonel Boris, the magic room. Wow. I mean, this made me feel like we went from a spy novel, for a sense, to a completely psychological thriller. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I always find the psychological torture stuff hard to read. I could imagine it's very tough to write as well, but because as you're going through it, you're trying to figure out in your mind, like, what's real, what's he imagining in his head, the centipede piece and all that stuff. And you're just like, so I always find myself rereading it multiple times. But there was an interesting piece he has in the appendix where he did a lot of research into this type of psychological mind torture. So again, to your point with researching the weapons, he did the same thing with the mind torture as well. And really it kind of made that as accurate as possible for the time period with what the Russians were doing.
I can only imagine. I mean, Chris, what do you think on that? Like, trying to write something like that, and the challenge of depicting it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like Joe said, it was very hard to kind of. I found myself reading it multiple times because I wanted to make sure what I was reading was right. But I kind of think that is exactly what Horowitz was going for the readers, because he wanted us to imagine what Bond was going through with all the psychological torture and like the mind twisting of it all. So it was really cool that we kind of went through that. We kind of went under a certain type of spell, having to reread, and because it was confusing. Like, if you have no knowledge of what the Russians actually did in history, it would be very confusing for somebody to kind of jump in and kind of read. But knowing that they did this type of psychological torture, and it made sense, but it was also really interesting to kind of get almost transported, and we had to undergo that as well, like as Bond was doing it. So I think it was really cool, very trippy, and it took a few times to read, but I think very intentional. It was very much so Horowitz's intention to have it be that kind of trippy.
Yeah, for me, it was very intense. I mean, I got really anxious reading those parts. Yeah, and I was also reminded of, I don't know if you agree, but Scaramanga's themed rooms in his islands. It
Yeah.
was, what's
I saw
happening
that
there,
too.
Yeah, so, yeah, but I was really anxious reading those parts, and it freaked me out, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has some twisted elements to it, for sure.
Yeah, I really like this chapter a lot. I think so the references back to all the other Bond novels, like all of those throwbacks of like all the awful parts,
Yeah.
just made it really more enjoyable. Maybe I'm a bit of a sadist there, but Horowitz does a really good job of grasping, like, Bond has gone through all of these crazy things in his career, and then just like turning it upside down and bringing it all back. It's like, the stuff that he's done, like, it comes back to haunt him, and like being on this crazy drug trip like makes it even worse, and it makes me think, oh, I better not, like the things in my life, what have I done? Like, what would happen if I went on a really bad drug trip? And yeah, so it's a really great chapter.
Don't do drugs, Bond fans.
No, I would never.
No. Peyote is bad. I can't imagine first trying to write that. And to your point, Joe, that's got to be a challenge to write something like that. But then kind of to touch on like what you said, Jocelyn, pulling from all of the other like heartache and like woeful moments he's had in other adventures, you're sitting there going, oh, okay, he's really like pushed a lot of this emotionally down and it's all coming out. And how he pulled that off was, I thought, probably the strongest element of this book.
Here's a quick kind of sidetrack question. Would you argue that this book or this version of Bond is the most real that we've gotten to his internal character? Or would you say another novel kind of portrayed that a bit more? I mean, because I felt like we were able to really, like Chris was saying, see what was pushed down, and the psyche of Bond came out with this. And I thought it was really interesting because he started, thinking about certain things, thinking about, did I even make a good decision to become an agent? What's the point, of all of this at the end? So I'm just curious because as somebody who's kind of had a kind of an idea of what Bond has been going through, I think this is the most intense that we've really seen him and his true colors come out.
Yeah, you see that he's questioning himself, about the choices, about what's going to happen next. So yes, I agree.
I think in comparison to like all of the Fleming books that have come out, like the first 5, we really get to explore Bond's psyche and everything that's going on in his head, and then starting pretty much like after Thunderball, like Fleming actually starts to write a lot less of the Bond psyche, and like mostly because he started writing for film, like with the intention of his books to be made into movies, right? And so I think Horowitz does a great job of like being able to bring all of that back and like kind of explore some of those things that didn't happen in the latter Fleming books, for sure.
Yeah, I think the fact that this book deals with psychological torture just lends itself to the fact that you're going to get more of that kind of inner monologue than you normally would.
Yeah, and it made me think how long I would take under torture. I would say like 10 minutes, and that's it.
You're gonna put what under my what? No. What do you want to know? Blue. His name is Tim. No, I get it. No, but one of the fun things that Horowitz worked into this was the fact that he also went into a book called The Rape of the Mind, which is a real book, and he utilizes that. Bond actually utilizes it to kind of help prepare himself to go back to kind of understand that, okay, I've been psychologically through this, I've been tortured, I know what I'm walking back into, basically. But then he uses this book to kind of help prepare himself to go back in and come out with some type of sanity afterwards. And I think that was another one of those beautiful tie-ins. Just like with any book, we've got to talk about Bond Girls. And I want to go ahead and lean into the Bond Girl Project, Handa, and I want you to lead in with this. Tell me, what did you think about Katya and really how she kind of came full circle in this story?
Sure. Yes, I changed my mind when I read the book a couple of months ago, up to this moment. Initially, I thought she was a little bit shallow. The way that she, when she met Bond and then she forgot her beliefs and changed her mind, I thought it was too quick. I thought at least we need a little bit more chapters to see that happening, And right now, actually, after a few months after reading the book, I totally understand her, I think Bond was kind of an excuse for her to defect in a way, and she was waiting for that moment. And initially, when I was writing that, I didn't see that, And it's not that Bond, magic Bond coming and, converting her. And then she's actually the daughter of the main villain. And, and the fact that she had a history with her first love, he was kind of open-minded, and she kind of gave him to to the police because he was spreading, you know, the new ideologies, and you know, and that's funny because she lost that person, she was very bruised, you know, herself. And the way I see now, I think that she was just waiting for the opportunity. It's not the fact that Bond came and he just, you know, with his guts and everything, he converted her. No, she was the one that was waiting for an opportunity. So I really liked it, and I like her a lot. I didn't like the end, the way that she dies. I hope that she would survive, but well, I don't know. Maybe the author had his motives. So I don't know.
I agree with Handa. I love the fact that it was this whole like dynamic of father and daughter and the lost love and everything. But what was your take on her as a whole?
Yeah, I think similar to Handa, she, I think secretly maybe she was hoping it would work out with Bond, but she knew it was never going to work out. Like she was very much a realist. Like she knew it had no chance of working, but maybe secretly she hoped it would. But yeah, she used it as her opportunity to get out, and that was her way to make kind of a break. Hopefully, start a new life in London, or get to London and then get to wherever, so she could make a better life for herself.
Yeah, yeah. Did you find her to be? I'll go with what Handa used. Did you find her to be shallow, or did you find her to be a little more dynamic as the book went on and kind of open up?
Yeah, I think more the latter, a little bit more dynamic, not so much shallow. Maybe the first part of the book, maybe you kind of get that feeling because there's that scene on the train where she's attacked, and I never really bought that as being real. I always thought that was kind of a setup for Bond. When I first read it, I kind of read it that way. But yeah, I didn't really feel that way. Like even at the end, as she dies and kind of sacrifices herself there, she's definitely not a shallow character as the book goes on.
Yeah, Jocelyn.
So her character at the beginning, I felt very. I think that shallow vibes. I think it was very much that From Russia with Love kind of feeling with the whole introduction and all that kind of stuff, because she's eventually has to do, basically having to have two identities of like helping Bond out, but then also like trying to help out her country at the same time and being put in this unfortunate predicament. And I think the story gets to become like her character becomes more complicated as you get to know her, like especially with her relationship of her past lover. And I kind of wonder if her actions were actually more of a redemption on making it up to her previous lover by doing the things for Bond.
I love that.
Yeah, but it is to like make amends, and do the right thing.
Well, I mean, when Daddy's a psycho, and he's having you like strap guys down in rooms and inject them with hallucinogenics, I can only imagine just the level of like, I'll just say it, mind fuckery that does to someone. I mean, it's not that in itself is a complete psychological break of you have this person that you look up to, you're trusting, your father, that father figure in your life, and then to have them like ask you to do these completely inhumane and insane things. Just nope, you're going to do it. That's what we do. This is our family. I mean, whew. Chris, what was your take?
So, oh man, I know we talked about this off camera. Her character and basically her being the whole Bond girl of the story was probably not, when you guys can debate me on this if you want, or agree, whatever, but that was one of the most lacking parts of this book, was her character and her, what she brought to the story, at least in comparison to the previous two novels. I think the previous two novels, the Bond girls in that gave Bond a run for his money and kind of challenged him a bit more. Then Katya was a little bit more, all I could see, again, I know somebody mentioned this, I think it was Jocelyn, was From Russia with Love. I could just see Tatiana. That's all I kept seeing with her character. And I think it was more so of she was doing this because she was in a situation she kind of had to. And Bond knew that, so he played along with it, and it was just kind of that cat and mouse going back and forth. But it just felt like there was just something missing with her character, and then of course the death of her was definitely like, it was like going up, and then it's one of those things like like using an aircraft term, you just stall and fall out of the sky. That's what it felt like when their death scene, because you just were like, oh great, there's machine guns. Oh, that she's dead. Okay, like so I wish, and it's not. I just wish she had a better ending or a better just character arc, because I felt like there was so much potential there, especially with the whole idea of her redeeming herself for her past lover. Like that was a great foundation to like have her, I don't know, go ahead and make it to London and have a better life instead, you know. And so that was kind of one of the low points for me at this novel. If we're talking about low points, was her character, because I felt like it could have been developed a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it was a similar feeling from what happened with Tracy, right? Everything was going well, they were okay, and then all of a sudden she dies, you know? And I felt the same way. Yeah.
I picked up, I was getting like Leah Sadu from Spectre, where it was like, I hate you, I love you. Like, whoa. I felt like it was so abrupt that the love connection happened. And don't get me wrong, it was better than Spectre. He did spread it out over, a chapter or two, that they developed something at least. But
not the Spectre conversation. That's a whole nother video. Oh, geez.
Oh, I know. We're not going to dive down that rabbit hole too much. But yeah, I think she was a weak point. And to your point, and Jocelyn, you chime in here. Let me know. What do you think? Her death.
So two trains of thoughts in that. As like one, it could be like she wanted to redeem herself, so she's gonna run out there, and because she knew she was gonna die, right? But then I was also thinking, like, is it just lazy writing? Like, especially with talking about James Bond and how, Bond saves the day and he gets the girl and they go have a romp around and everything's hunky dory, and like in this day and age, like some people don't really like that ending of like, that's the way, hey, right? And so could this also be just lazy writing of like, let's just put her off and we don't have to worry about that?
Well, isn't it also too at the end of the other two novels, he doesn't get the girl, right?
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, I kind of wish it was like, I kind of wish it was like that, to where they do split separate ways, because then we would get the sense that she was able to redeem herself. She did what she was really underlyingly wanting to do. But yeah, to that extent, I that's what I was kind of feeling, was the whole lazy writing idea.
Yeah.
It's just easier to just kill her
Right.
than like make up. They get to London together, they have a few flings, and like she falls in love with someone else, and Bond goes on his way. But I don't.
Yeah. It felt flat. Her death was, I don't know. I felt like it was so abrupt, like you said, just kind of fell out of the sky. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think everything happened like in 2 pages, right? 2 pages. And then she said, hey, it's a trap. And she was dead,
And then moved on to the next scene.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's kind of like end of the book. He's tying up loose ends quickly to kind of get to the end,
Yeah.
And that happens a lot in movies and TV shows. The ending seems to be completely rushed. It's like, well, wait a minute, what happened? It's like, we're done already. Like there's no development about it.
I feel like Bond actually gave Mathis more love, throwing him in a dumpster and robbing him, than he gave Katya. He was just like, oh, she's mowed down. Peace. like, oh,
nothing
okay.
I can do. Let's move on,
Yeah. And I mean, and I guess to that point, that's what a spy would do. You have to have that separation, that shut it off right now with your emotions, to be able to just move on. So, but
come on. I mean, in The World's Not Enough, he killed Electra, and he stayed like 30 seconds there, mourning and everything. Okay, let's move on. Let's avoid a nuclear war or something like that, Yeah, he took a time to mourn and grieve, right?
Yeah. But I don't think he was getting sprayed with bullets. I don't think he was getting shot at in that moment. I think that may be the difference. I don't know.
He was more dreading that dive into the water. Thinking like, should I take the stairs or not?
Right. I got a tie on. I don't know. All right. So in kind of closing, Jocelyn, I'm going to start with you. Start to finish, what was your overall thoughts of With a Mind to Kill?
So overall, the book, I will give much credit to Horowitz with all of the work and research that he's put in. I actually spent a lot of time doing research on all the, like, as he's writing about all these things, so all the locations and things, and um, I spent a lot of time like kind of reading about it or analyzing it, like, and and just how everything ties together. It's just done so beautifully. Like for example, all of the characters, all the Russian characters, they actually all have name meanings, and they are appropriate for the character and their personality or what they're about to do. Like for example, Katya's character, her name translates to pure, perfect, and that just seemed really fitting. And anyway, you all can do the homework and and
Sure.
find out. So like reading all of the book, like I enjoyed all of it all the way up to the end. Like I actually hate the end, and that especially the timing of when the book was released after No Time to Die, because No Time to Die was like, oh, that was great, that, oh, he's dead, and then we get this, and and you're just left with like this
Course.
Ambiguous ending.
ended a big ending, and you're like, okay, why do we have to have this right after No Time to Die? It's just like more
Preach.
depressing, like not happy ending. No, like Bond saves the day and we get to live another beautiful day. Yeah, so that's where I am.
Yeah, timing. Panda, what about you?
Well, I had a lot of fun reading the book. Yeah, I loved it, everything. I had a lot of fun. For example, I don't know if you recall the part that he's putting to a test and that he's supposed to kill a British agent. And ultimately, it's not a British agent. It's a Soviet person that's just trying him out, And then they had a fight, and ultimately Bond kills him. And he goes back to Boris and says, "Hey, I needed to kill him, but the weapon was not working." So that scene for me, that part for me, it's pure espionage. The way things happened, it's nice, really nice. It was super exciting. So let's see. Bottom line, I loved it a lot. I had a lot of fun. I didn't like the ending, like Jocelyn mentioned. Yeah, and especially the fact that we don't know what happens. Bottom line, I loved it a lot. I had a lot of fun, and I'm gonna read it again. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. And so let's touch on that for a second, because at the end, I think everybody watching at home, you guys probably know this. I mean, he walks away, and it's funny for me, and maybe, I don't know if you guys did this or not. I got to the end and I was like, he just kind of walks off, and you're like,
Yeah.
Am I missing? I literally looked at my book and checked to make sure I wasn't missing a page. I was like, did somebody prank me? Is there another chapter? It's that abrupt. It's that just kind of, and we're done. And I really feel like it left you hanging.
Compared to some of the other Fleming books, sometimes there's a debrief, right, that happens. Like when I'm Secret Service, like there's a debrief that happens, and you don't even get that, and that just doesn't feel satisfying. Like,
yeah,
did he even accomplish the mission?
Right.
Sort of.
And I think that's the ambiguous part about it, is he wanted to leave it open for the next author, I feel like. And I feel like it's part of his genius of Horowitz, of, like I said, you've got the bookends and the book in the middle. And I've been saying that the whole time. But it leaves it wide open to interpretation for the next author to step in if they want to do a continuation novel. So, but Chris, what did you think overall? Where are you at with this book?
Overall, and I'm just comparing it to the previous two. It's definitely not my favorite. I did find it. I mean, it was an adventure and it was an escape, which if I can't get into it and I don't feel like I'm escaping somewhere else, then it's not for me. But this novel did just that. Again, like Jocelyn said, hats off to Horowitz for all the deep research that he did. And then going back to what I was saying with the Waterstones edition, where you get the kind of synopsis of what it took to get to the point of writing into his third book.
Mm-hmm.
he did suffer from writer's block, and he did had to work through that. And to know that and to see what he came up with was amazing, because he didn't like have any other Fleming stuff to pull from, any Fleming literature to pull from. This was all him, and he had the task to keep that Fleming-esque type of writing while still writing himself, you know. And he did great. I mean, it felt like a Fleming novel. It felt like a real true espionage novel. Again, unfortunately though, like the downfall of this whole novel was the back half of it. I mean, it was the ending. It was the death of Katya. I really wish I would have heard what M would have talked to him about as a debrief. Like, you know, he gets back to London and M comes back, because as far as we know up to this point, everyone still thinks M's dead. So I don't know how that is supposed to play out. But just it would have been interesting to hear the ending of him getting back. Instead, we're kind of left with an open ending, which, to your point, Chris, makes perfect sense for the next generation of Bond novelists to continue with that if they want to go that direction. But you know, it was a great read. Not my, if we're doing top three, is probably my bottom, number three out of the Horowitz novels. The other two definitely for me, just they did it. And I don't know if it's because it kind of felt with the whole, and remember, we're dealing with, when this time frame with the book coming out, the 60th anniversary of Bond, as well as the 70th anniversary of Fleming. Like, we were in that era. So I'm almost wondering if he kind of like felt the need to hurry up and finish the book so it could have came out at a good time. And maybe that's possibly why it kind of fell flat towards the end, at least for me. But I mean, that is an external pressure that, you know, shouldn't have overly affected it all. But overall, as a fan of Bond and Fleming, I think he knocked it out of the park, and I think he encapsulated his trilogy perfectly. And I mean, definitely a book I'd go back and read again.
Yeah, and it was. I feel like the biggest problem I had with this book, and Joe, I want to hear what you have to say in just a second, but I feel like the biggest problem, and chime in, guys, if you're on this as well, it is that quintessential Cold War thriller book. It really gives you that vibe. But the problem with that in this adventure specifically was that we're like 100% Russia, and it's just gray and dark and dreary. There's no beach, there's no car chase, there's no gadgets. We're missing some of the tropes because he's locked in Russia to give us that psychological element. And you know, Joe, I guess I'll kind of lead you towards this. Do you feel like, as a whole, what did you feel about the book, but also do you feel like those elements added or took away from the book?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I enjoyed the book. I thought it was an easy read. I read it actually on an airplane. My flight to and from visiting family, I was able to read the whole thing. I thought it had a nice flow to it. I don't say it's my favorite Horowitz book, probably middle. I think I like Trigger Mortis is my favorite of the group.
Me too.
But I think he has to walk this fine line, because you're either going to write a period book, right? So you're back in the 60s. There's no tech, there's no cell phones, there's no GPS, right? When you start doing modern books, you run into all those problems with technology that you have to either conveniently ignore or explain away. So going backwards in time gives you the ability to say, well, there is no cell phone. There's no, you know, I mentioned he was gouging his the bullet wound. Well, that's DNA evidence. That's everywhere. Well, it doesn't matter because they're not testing for DNA back then, right? So you can get away with a lot of things that you don't have to, I think, explain. And one of the things that I think with this book, and Hannah mentioned, as I was going to bring this up, is the train platform fight in the second act. I thought that was really well done. I enjoyed it so much that I think the character was Zephyr, right, that he killed. And he walks out and he's like, hey, the gun you gave me was faulty, so I just threw him under a train. Like, just so matter-of-factly, like, I don't know what to tell you. He's dead. And they're all like in awe, like they don't know what to think about it. Like, did he just kill him? Like, really? Like, you know? So I really enjoyed that part of the book. I thought that was kind of like, it felt very Bond to me when that happened. Like, oh, yeah, I know, I just killed him. We're all good. Let's go. So, but I do like Horowitz. I think he knows his Fleming. He does put a lot of references in there that I know that bugs some people. I kind of enjoy them. And he definitely does the research, and that's what I like. He, you know, if you read through the appendix, is a great read. Like, he really spends the time to go into it and then weave that into his story. And I think that's quite fun. you know, I appreciate that. And when an author does that.
Yeah, he blended a lot of really cool elements in this, like you said, the train platform and just the nonchalantness, you know, the torture rooms. And we talked about that earlier. Here, I'll put a couple of these up here. You know, some of these torture rooms really did happen, and the fact that he goes into description to really try to give you that sense of like desperation and gloom and just hopelessness, that you're in this room of like, this is bad. This is like one of the worst things that you can have happen in your life. And I felt like he really encompassed that in the entire feel of the book. But in order to do that, he had to sacrifice some things. And that's where I felt like the tone of this book was so much darker, especially coming off No Time to Die. You know, we were all just like, Bond is dead. Okay, give me something. Okay, Horowitz to save the day. I loved his first two books. Here we go. Girl's dead. We don't know what he's doing, and the book's over. Okay, well, and I kind of got like a drab feeling with this book just because it was, and maybe that's a misconception, but Jocelyn, you know, you said you've done a lot of research on the locations. Tell me about some of these locations.
Even though all of it does take place in Russia, Russia is actually a very beautiful country, and the details that are the ornate details in some of these locations, for example, the opera house, the big thing happens, like a beautiful opera house, the train station fight that happens, beautiful train station, the place where they go have dinner, where all the spies and the hush hush, like even that venue, it's no longer there. And like it just closed like maybe 5-10 years ago or something like that, but it's also, it has such an ambiance, and there's lots of vibrant colors. Russia tends to use a lot of different colors in their architecture too, and um so I feel that just everything, that all the locations that Horowitz has picked out, it's not what you think it would be, and I think if you take the time to take a look at it, it's pretty amazing.
It kind of opens up that world a little bit better. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, as I said,
A better like image of Russia, which is really sad, like especially the current political climate where it's like I can't go to Russia right now to experience these beautiful places. I mean, it's kind of sad.
yeah, yeah, and I think in the book Horowitz, he was aware of some of this stuff because you had mentioned we were talking previously about the train station having these beautiful chandeliers, and that's the title of that chapter where the fight happens: "Death Beneath the Chandeliers." So he kind of references some of this thing. So he was clearly aware of that, and which is kind of a nice tie-in.
This has been a great read. Thank you to all of my guests for coming out, spending time today with me to go over this book. If you haven't checked this book out, it's out on paperback now. Go check it out. And as always, Merry Christmas, 007.